Alrighty, good morning. As you can tell, the sun is up, so unfortunately, this is a slow start to Monday since I woke up at sunrise. Brain is slow, but obviously, we're looking at topics, right, every day, just discussing and tracking and reflecting on different things. What this becomes, I have no idea, but today we're looking at perspectives. Mental perspectives. Today's topic, as you just saw, is narcissism. So, before I dive into the first bullet point of narcissism, let's make breakfast because I'm starving. So, as of late, I've been very curious about the idea of narcissism and how it ties into quality of life. Now, obviously, you can talk about just being narcissistic and the pitfalls of that and how there's like narcissistic personality disorder, but I don't want to get into the whole scientific look at it. I kind of want to look at it from the sense of, and I have been looking at it from the sense of how the traits of being narcissistic tie into the paradox of pursuing a goal or improving or just trying to improve the quality of your life, right? So we have like two sides. We have the people who are super ambitious and work really hard and trying to achieve goals. Then you have the other side, which is you're just trying to live a good life, be happy, quality of life, trying to enjoy moments. And in both sides, there's kind of this paradox I've been realizing where, the idea of the more you try at something, the harder it will be to get it. Like the more you keep pushing and thinking about it and mulling over it, the harder it is to achieve it because you're so self-critical about it, you're so obsessed with it that you get taken down this narrow tunnel without seeing that there's other possibilities or avenues that can take you further down the path that you want to achieve without going on the direction that you chose. And that's something that I guess everybody knows, right? Like you should probably just let things marinate. It's like if you cook something super fast, it isn't always gonna come off pretty well, right? Because you're giving so much attention to it. You're trying to flip it, trying to turn it, trying to flip that steak, or add some more seasoning to it, or just be really hyper focused on it instead of being patient and letting it marinate, or letting it sit there in the heat and slowly cook through, or just timing your charring and all that, right? And so that analogy applies to life too, right? So if we take that in mind, something I'm curious about is the more we think about ourselves and the more we look at the characteristics of being narcissistic, how much does that affect our ability to keep improving? How much does that tie into what we are unable to accomplish because we're so bent on what we want to do instead of being more flexible and looking at what we're trying to achieve and just letting it, I don't want to say achieve itself, but letting yourself just go step by step and letting the outside world influence your growth or support your growth or your dreams or your goals or whatever they may be, rather than your inside world of just being hyper focused on what you want to do and what you can do and what you think is good and not. So we're going to dive into three things. I'll be back after I get ready for the day, and then we'll look at the three topics within narcissism, the three characteristics that I think have very high importance on this interesting paradox I'm mulling over. So with the first point of self-aggrandizing or having a grandiose view on yourself, yes, if you are pathologically narcissistic, I'm assuming that's the right way of tying the two together, but have a narcissistic personality disorder, then you will have this idea that your personality is large and you are the center of attention. You're the most important person in the room, and nothing really should affect that, right? Everything should be about you, and that is the core of it, right? But if we tie that perspective, we take away from I would say the everyday fact of being like, hey, everything's about me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I don't care what other people think. And we just pull out the core theme of that, the core theme of self-centeredness, large view of thyself, and apply it to what you're trying to achieve. So if you apply it to two things, let's say you're super ambitious and you want to become a billionaire, for example, or you're simply just trying to live a simple, joyous life and you're in a city that's like very fast paced and you are constantly working all day and you're like, you know what, I just want to pull away and have a calm life. In both those cases, you end up kind of seeing this thing where you may, at least I've seen that a lot of people, including myself, will go on this path of really hyper focusing on what I need to do. What do I need to change? How do I need to change it? How do I need to go about my day to day? And usually we start with, okay, daily routine. How are we waking up? What are we doing throughout the day? How much are we working? What are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? It just creates this whole image for ourselves, right? And try and tackle each one by one by one. And we look at it at the end of the day or end of the week, end of the month, saying, okay, I had the discipline to do this, the discipline to do that, the discipline to do this. And then the points where we're succeeding, it looks really good. We're like, I did this. And we feel so proud of ourselves. And that's great. That's what's really important to change. You need to be, one, proud of yourself, two, have a track of what you need to do, and three, execute on your plan. That's obvious. Everyone knows that. But the other side of it is we do see people falling off track. We do see ourselves falling off track. We do see ourselves kind of swaying away from the path that we've set for ourselves for whatever reason. And I'm starting to think that that has something to do with the idea of too much pressure that we put on our crock pot, right? We're cooking the rice on too much heat. And it's not to say that pressure isn't good or that you should take the pressure off, because that again is in its own fallacy. The problem is that we're too centered on the thing that doesn't really have a complete bearing. That if we think about how it may have this narcissistic spin when we try to achieve these high points of views, it's not really about being humble towards other people or to kind of put yourself down or to be like, hey, I'm not all that. It's more about realizing that it's a cognitive dissonance that we may have, and the benefit really is to have a realistic perspective about the journey to get to where we need to get, while having a clear view of destination. So it's not saying forget about this, forget about that. It's saying earn the right to be who you plan to be, so that it feels true to you, so that when you speak to people, you act in front of people, it almost comes off like you've always been that person rather than you're trying to be someone. Basically fake versus inauthentic. But yeah, that's point one. I'm going to make dinner after work, and then we'll see if that ties into point two and keep building on this idea. There's a lot to think about here. Let's look at the next one. Oh, I almost threw that away. Trait two, lack of empathy. So in narcissism, lack of empathy is a very large characteristic that separates normal people from narcissists. Now, if I get flack for you not using the right word and calling people who aren't narcissistic normal, that's going to be shocking. In this situation, when we compare lack of empathy to what we want to achieve, or our goals, or changes in life, or whatever we pursue as people, I think that one interesting thing with lack of empathy isn't the fact that we are not empathetic. It is the fact that we don't consider the other people in the world. That's an example, actually. When we look at entrepreneur, everyone wants to be a successful, rich entrepreneur and driving the fast cars and having a cool business and the mansion and everything like that, right? And if you go ask an entrepreneur, talk to someone who's like, oh, you want to do entrepreneurship? Did you know about this? And we have this grand idea of ourselves, this self-centered perspective. We don't consider, ooh, that does not look good. We don't consider the implications. It's bad onion. We don't consider the implications it may have on those of us who don't have the stomach for working that hard or don't have the capacity to go on that path. And if we take larger journeys, then we end up making this mistake of thinking that we know better than the people who've gone that path, and we can do what we want. And so again, yes, like it is important to have self-confidence in what you do. However, I do think that it's also important to consider the people around you and their implications that they may have on you. Really just listening and reflecting on what your goal is and how other people have endured those goals, and really taking on the opinions of other people and seeing and weighing and comparing. A good way to look at that is kind of saying, okay, like I want to go and, perfect example, I want to go do computer science. I love coding. Okay, I want to go do computer science in school, and I love coding, and I want to like code all day and all that. And then you go ask people, and they're like, why do you want to do computer science? Like, oh, I really love coding. They're like, you know what, go do a college diploma instead and go do like a 2 year program and you'll be able to code and it's something that you want to do. And you're like, wait, no, but I want to go to university. University is this, and college is beneath me. Whatever you may think, right? Just an example, obviously, to each their own. But when it comes down to that, you review other people's opinions and you never reflect on why would they say that to you. Do they think that you're not smart enough for university? Do they think this, that of you? Then you realize that it's not necessarily that you're not good enough for university or the fact that you don't belong where you want to go. It's that 3 years down the line of being in university, you realize that all you do in computer science is logic thinking and you barely code. The most code you write is literally like this much and this much actual English writing to describe what you're doing. And so there's validity in what other people have to say when it comes down to achieving our goals and perspectives. And so, regardless of how far you want to go down your paths or pursuits in life, we kind of have this whole dilemma, I would say, where we're so hyper focused on what we want to achieve, what we want to do, where we want to go, that we don't, oh, these are washed, okay, where we don't consider that other people may have gone down that path, other people may have the perspectives. Oh boy, the knife needs to be sharpened. Other people may have perspectives that we are unaware of, and when we're so self-centered about our goals and our perspectives, we don't necessarily consider the alternatives and the ideas. So to conclude that, because my camera died, before I go fry everything, when you're looking at the second point of self-absorption or lack of empathy for other people, we want to consider the idea that there are other people in this world who have gone through the experiences that we may pursue or the goals that we may want to achieve or the ones who've tried and haven't achieved it. And it's very important to consider, communicate, and talk to those people and encourage yourself to open your horizons outside of your tunnel vision of your goal and perspective to be able to take a better interpretation of what this world has experienced and endured as you take the kind of overall human experience. Because that's what leads to real creativity, pushing the envelope, doing things that people haven't done before, or just improving your life in general. And this all comes down from taking the outside opinion and applying it to your life. And it's not from saying that, okay, other people's opinions are going to be weighed so heavily that it alters your life. Take an analytical approach and say, is this a good idea, a bad idea, an idea that should be changed, an idea that should be altered? And then you take their concerns, take their approvals, you take all of that and you weigh it neutrally and say, okay, if I were to use this lens on my life, how would it affect what I want to achieve? Having that practice allows you to open your horizons to different points of views and improve on what you want to achieve, changing your goals for better, altering your pursuits for more fruitful pursuits, and ultimately improving on what the previous generations or the people around you have improved on thus far, kind of leading to like a better overall everything. So with that being said, let's look at the final point after I cook dinner and eat, and then we'll kind of conclude this whole discussion about applying a narcissistic lens on improving or changing your life. So for the final characteristic of narcissism that we're going to apply, we're looking at the need for admiration or gratification. And I find that to be very applicable if you think about it. If you reflect on a lot of goals that we may have had growing up or currently may have, and ask ourselves why. This is kind of a subtopic that I'll touch on later, but on another video. But I've been reflecting on the questions of why. And if you ask yourself, why do you want what you want? And you can't go all the way to the core where you can't ask why anymore, where you kind of breach the fundamentals, kind of like why is a cow named a cow, right? Or when you're a child, you ask these questions like why is a cow named a cow? And it's like fundamentally we're not going to get into like the deep conversation about how it was called this in Latin and the meaning for this and the meaning for that. And like yes, there is probably a correlation to it, but that's not necessary. But if you can go to that depth, there's benefit to it. But answering the question of why all the way down to your kind of core reason why you want to do something. If you can't do that for all the things you want to pursue in life, then why are you really doing it? And we kind of find this point where most of our whys rest on trying to prove something to someone else, trying to earn a sort of reputation or really do or pursue things for the benefit of the respect or the admiration or the appreciation from other people rather than our own self-respect, self-appreciation. And that's not to say that we're hyper focused again on ourselves and saying, oh, we're the ones who should validate what we want to do. Yes, touch on the previous point of have a awareness and reflection on how other people view what you want to do and use it as an analytical lens. However, here too is another point of not doing it for other people, but doing it for yourself to a core value that's intrinsic to you. So I'll give you an example. Why would you spend the money on like a beef tartare instead of a hamburger or like a large meal, right? Why would I go get a beef tartare that's gonna fill me up with like this little food, like 4 ounces, where I can get like a nice 8 ounce piece of hamburger with like a large set of fries and it just fills me up and it's like juicy and flavorful. Well, I like there's different layers to it. Like, why would you want to do that? Well, one, I like the complexity of the flavor. Two, I like the sophistication of eating that together. Three, I like the ambiance where you get these places. Four, I like the feeling of being in these spaces. Are you doing it for the fact that people are going to look at you and think that you're better? No, I actually thoroughly enjoy the idea of having the sophistication and the enjoyment of sitting there with my fork and spoon and or fork and knife and piecing it together, cutting up the bread, right? It's not, and then so you may apply the lens of being like, oh, he's probably doing it because he wants to seem cool, wants to seem rich, wants to seem whatever, right? Whether those facts are true or not, it's trying to be a persona, right? That could be an easy lens to apply. But if you ask me why I really do it, I really don't care if anybody sees me. I could be in a restaurant all by myself, or I could be surrounded by people. I would do the same thing. I could go out by myself and get that same meal versus I could do it with a bunch of people and say, oh, I want this and order this to look cool, look sophisticated, look classy. But the truth is that I thoroughly enjoy it for a fundamental reason to me. And that is where we're going to, right? If you could do it in a room alone, and in a room full of people, then that's something that's probably true to you. And it isn't to be like in a room alone where you're thinking about how other people will view you. If they were watching right now, what would they say? No, no, no. This is like if no one was watching you, would you do it? And that's the idea of applying the lens of, okay, are you doing it for the approval or the admiration of other people? Or are you doing it because you are truly, truly interested and passionate about it? And so that lens is very important to say that it's not for other people, it's really for you. And I think that kind of brings it all into a nice space. To conclude, we're looking at the three perspectives of narcissism from the high level to really reflect and say how much unnecessary introspection are we doing to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. It's more about taking a rational point of view and saying how far on the pendulum swing am I leaning? Am I leaning too far right where I'm only caring about myself, or am I leaning too far left where I'm only caring about other people? You want to find a perfect in between where your goals are in mind, your pursuits are in mind, your passions, your drive, your whatever it may be, your dream of being on a beach versus your dream of being in a 5-star hotel, whatever it may be, um, are both in line, but you're not dragging yourself away from your goal by taking these right swing, narcissistic points of view that deplete you from actually achieving your goal. So that's just kind of something I've been grappling with. It was a fun little reflection for you. And I hope this kind of opens up some perspective on how there is the law of diminishing return with almost anything. And when it comes to improving yourself or focusing on yourself, it is a very, very important law to pay attention to. That when you pay so much attention to yourself, there is a diminishing value because you end up almost creating this erosion or this toxicity or this fermentation of idea. That's a good way of putting it. The more energy you put into it, the more it ferments. The more time you spend focusing on what you want to achieve, the more your idea may ferment rather than cultivate and form into fruition. It's almost like turning something that rests over time and becomes a really good wine, or giving it too much air, oxygen, and time, and it turns into vinegar. You don't want to have it too, I would say, unfermented, or you don't want it to rest too little because then it just turns into grapes. It's just sugary grapes at that point. It's not fermented at all. Nor do you want it to be some bitter vinegar that just tastes terrible. You want it to be right in between where it tastes like a delicious, flavorful wine. With that being said, have a good night.